super excited to be back here. This build is giving Dan chills. See that? I'm excited about this one because as a child of the 80s in Southern California, if you grew up around these parts, you were all about off-road trucks. Names like Rod Hall and Dick Sepek and Bill Strope and Walker Evans and those grizzled veterans of the Baja Peninsula. And this man, Darren Parsons, is a guy who continues that tradition, stares death in the face, and just like all out of ain'ts to care, right?
Scares the shit out of all of us.
Completely.
Every single person in here has been scared at some point.
And excited to see the latest build, literally brought back from the ashes.
Before we get into it, why the Ranger?
Mid-size trucks are good for off-road, and it's kind of something that I envisioned as a high school kid. I-beam suspension was probably the biggest consideration with going the Ford Ranger route. Solid trucks that you can beat the holy crap out of was my goal when I was in high school, and Ford Ranger was the king of that.
A high school truck on, you decided to build the heck out of it. Now, exterior-wise, we'll just talk about this for a bit because aesthetically, you've gone through quite a few different changes in this truck.
Yeah, we've been through
this new livery. It's fantastic.
So it was kind of like some of the 90s vibe. That's kind of what I wanted out of it. I wanted like something that was kind of like reminded me of being at the lake and seeing the power boats and the jet skis and stuff when I was a kid. So that's why we went with this. Heatwave whipped up the design for me. It's actually kind of based off of one of their pairs of sunglass arms that I was like, hey, this is the inspiration I want. Let's do something like this. And they're like, yeah, let's do that.
That's super simple then. I always love that when you kind of derive something off of, like I've built a car off of shoes before. It's like, I like those shoes. Yeah. I'll choose those colors. That's pretty cool. So just to see that.
So it's had a Raptor body on it. It's had like a 2006 Ford Ranger body on it. But after this past big wreck, I was just like, let's just throw it back. I want to go back to the 90s. So this is what we came up with.
So big wreck. It was a big wreck.
Big wrecks, big accidents, it's like a whole theme in my life. And when I decided to wreck the shit out of my truck, I wrecked it real well.
And fire.
And fire.
The biggest, scariest thing.
Yeah, so what happened is the rear half of the chassis shifted, the fuel cell shifted, the filler neck popped off and dumped half of 32 gallons of fuel on the ground. I believe it ignited off the rear brake calipers because we were at the end of a race and it was literally the finish line jump that happened off of. And yeah, it burnt. The truck technically burnt from about here back, was charred, but the whole back of the chassis twisted over pretty well. Instead of cutting it right here where the damage had started on the chassis, I took it to my buddy who built the truck initially, Eric Moore, and he literally sent me a picture of the truck cut right here. That was all that was left of the original truck.
This is the original truck, right?
That's the original truck. And even that's been changed a few times. The core support is the only thing that's original on this truck. That's kind of ironic. I don't know why. All through the revisions, it's always had the 93 clip up there that I've built other stuff onto anyways.
Well, that's impressive that stayed intact.
So then once we redid the back of it, I'm like, how do we take this thing to the next level? I don't want welding mounts onto this thing everywhere with just gnarly tubes all hitting everything. I want something simplistic. We went to Camberg Racing and we did their kinetic back half on it. So the suspension is all CAD design, Camberg kinetic truck, lower control arms, trailing arms, the upper forelink, that's their rear housing. Again, I kind of was like leaning on people that have already done this stuff and been around for a while because I didn't want to experiment with what I thought would work, but I just went with things that I knew would work. So Kibitech designed the entire back half here. So from right here back, this is all Kibitech's 95-gallon fuel cell, his laser cut tubing setup, and him and Eric Moore welded it all together for me. And then we kind of made the center part right here. We just connected the two things together with the new cab and cab cage, the new rear half. And we wanted to have a lot of up travel. So that's why we have these big holes in the top of the fenders. You want to get this thing to sit on the rear wheels and really carry the front end over stuff. A lot of rear up travel always plays in your favor because you can just set it on the back. That's why we got 95 gallons of fuel. We got two 40-inch BFGs on the back. All this weight right here. I think we have this figured out to be just under 950 pounds.
In the rear?
Right here, past the rear axle.
What's the overall weight of the truck?
The truck weighs 5,700 pounds total.
Okay.
Front to rear, with fuel, with tools, ready to race.
Do you know the split in between front and rear?
It's 57% rear weight bias.
Wow.
Right. So we were aiming for 60 with I-beams considered in the front, which are big, heavy chunks of steel. We were very happy with 57% rear weight bias.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it really sits on the back and just carries over stuff.
So after the crash, everything was basically built in 3 sections then?
Yes.
So this, here, and that. And
yep. The back really kind of plays well into an open design so that we can just kind of put the trans coolers right here. The exhaust actually goes 8 into 1. It goes into a 3.5 merge collector with expands to 4-inch that splits to dual 3-inch out right here. It's full master stainless exhaust. Danny Giannini made it for me and it turned out really nice.
Yeah.
It has a really cool sound to it.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It's a little loud here for Long Beach, as we just found out. This cell is insane looking. Like, just how it fits with the tires and everything else is just beautiful.
Like him and his team over there designed the cell for a 40-inch tire back half. It's actually designed for a full-size truck, but obviously this is whatever it is at this point.
You just run pump gas, right?
91, yeah.
91. So
yeah, I don't want the race
cheap
gas
stuff.
stuff. Yeah, I don't want the race gas stuff.
When you're filling up 95 gallons.
Yeah, think about it. If you were running race gas, you'd have two 55-gallon barrels and you'd have 10 gallons left.
That would last me an entire season. You know, like
that's a half a race.
Yeah, that's insane.
You do feel quite a bit of difference from start to finish of the race with the fuel in the back, but with having this truck, before the fuel cell lived right here in the middle as a mid-cell truck, so I'm pretty good at driving this thing with little weight in the back. Mm-hmm. At the end of the race, actually, I think it's fun because I get to really start throwing it around and stuff.
A little bit,
It's like kind of a little skatey. So
now with this back half, I mean, a lot has changed because it's all brand new. You have the fuel cells relocated. What about the cooling and stuff? Has that all changed as well? Like, did you had to redesign basically everything?
Yeah, so that was another thing that I wanted to do, and I was happy to be able to take on during the rebuild is move the radiator to the back. So radiator had always been in the front before. I had heating issues. So with it in the back, you get your capacity up quite a bit. Danny Giannini designed all the tubing again for this, so it's all nice aluminum TIG welded tubing from the front to back. It just gives you a lot more capacity, so that makes your cooling system a lot more efficient, number one. And then number two, I left my windows in it. So if you look at the front of this thing, it's just a big funnel. Like it just takes air and it just, there's no other choice than for it to go straight through the radiator. So instead of having a pickup area this big of a grill, I have an entire windshield of air being shoved through this thing.
Wow.
And some people would think of that as being some type of aerodynamic downfall, but the reality is that creates a positive air chamber right there. So another thing in the theme of getting more rear weight, we pushed the seats back. So in the cab, the seats prior to would have been about, my head was even about with the B-pillar. So we're now back another 4 inches into the cab. It's kind of a scary thought thinking if you're that far back in the vehicle, but you really sit on the rear shocks, which is kind of cool. And then also you're getting more rear weight bias. And then most importantly of all, this is where all the structure is because you got your B-pillar
everything's over
and your C-pillar right over your head with your X's and your back of the cab. So this is the safest part of the truck right here.
If anything's gonna happen.
Yeah, this is where I want to be.
It's just like a rally car. Rally cars are the same way.
Yeah.
And then big drag cars, you know, you're sitting in that.
You're right back in that pocket.
You know, you have drag cars as well.
Yeah. PRP, I sent them some vinyl to make me seats with, and I wanted to go radical. It's kind of, again, with the 90s thing. So
talking about radical.
We went radical.
It was radical.
Got Kibby's Hoon handle in here. Got the bling of the goldness, and anyways,
Do you ever use that in a race?
Absolutely, a lot. Yeah, it's great because you can throw it into corners, and you use that to kind of keep traction. Otherwise, you get a lot of wheel spin, so you kind of just hold that. You put it in the corner, and you kind of hold the rear brake, and it just keeps it real planted in the line. I did Holly's big dashes in here too. These things are really cool. You get all your information on this thing. We use GPS on the iPads for navigation.
Just use a straight up iPad.
Yeah, so it's just an iPad. And then it uses a puck up there on the dash. That's your GPS module.
Okay.
It ties into this just like an airplane. And then that's your navigation while you're racing.
Just like an airplane.
The dash is a McNeil dash. So that, once again, it's just a piece that goes in there. The pads and everything just mount to it. And they all unplug off of it so that it can again have easy access.
Do you have any fire suppression in here?
Yeah, so Safecraft immediately contacted me after the wreck and were like, hey, where was your suppression system? Well, I did have one. It didn't work, it failed. I pulled the cable and the cable just came right out of the clasp.
Oh no.
So that was horrible. It wouldn't have done much for saving us because we were safely out of the truck, but it probably could have saved some of the truck, which is neither here nor there because the back of the truck was twisted anyways at that point.
So you have a couple bottles and a couple nozzles or what?
So I have a big bottle right here behind the cab, and then I have 4 nozzles. I have 1 on the back, 2 on the transmission, and 1 going forward towards the engine under the truck. And then inside the cab, I have 2 automatic dispensing nozzles that would go onto us if it was on fire. So there's little glass bulbs in there, and those would melt, and we would automatically be covered in safe foam. This part of the truck where the fire making stuff is, exhaust, coolers, fuel cell, that's all completely separated from us. There's no window in between us. When we redesigned this truck, this cab just essentially slides over it. This truck is entirely paneled in without the cab on it. So the cab just essentially sets on it so that the next time I wreck it, because it will happen again, then I just pull the cab off and put another one on, and the entire internal structure is all secure. This suspension is as basic as it gets. Put a wheel on a stick. I mean, that's just as simple as it is.
It doesn't look simple at all. It does not look simple. There's so much I want to see, but it's kind of hard just kneeling down. My knees hurt already.
Let's get up on the lift. I think we could probably get up there.
If it doesn't fit, then we'll talk about something else.
Okay.
All right, so I don't get a chance to see underneath these very often, except for when you're cruising through the air.
Yeah.
But it's very brief.
That's quick, yeah.
So we can actually see a lot more.
Triangles are everything off-road. That's the most sound structure you can possibly have. So we got triangles here. The front suspension is a triangle. The A-beam, like I said, it comes back to the center right here. That just reduces the caster change through the cycle. Again, creates more triangles. So triangle it in, triangle it out. And I've yet to break any of this stuff, right?
The gnarliest trans mount I've ever seen.
There's no polyurethane or anything in there. It's all solid mounted. Engine's solid mounted. It's as simple, as strong, as simple as can be is always the goal. 6-piston calipers.
Massive 6 pistons.
Yes. The hubs alone are 3¼ inch hubs. So they're huge. Camberg 3¼ inch hubs. 1.5 inch sway bar. Again, KB Tech design. These are his arms. Trailing arms are 55-inch long Camberg trailing arms. These are right off the shelf. Uniball front and rear. Real nice, simple stuff. 3-inch coilover, 440 bypass. Exhaust is cool. 8-in-1. You can see the 4-inch piece right here.
It's so sick.
And then the 4 splits to dual 3 right there. And I just wanted to do something a little different. A lot of people have the 4-inch single out, but I wanted to do the dual.
This is what makes this the part of the truck too, this frame rail.
Yeah, so that's...
I have to keep this.
I have to keep that. It still ties everything together in this truck.
Yeah.
As much as everything's changed, the frame rail still plays an important part of tying everything together. But you can see there's complete substructures on each side for the cage.
For this here?
Yeah, I mean, it goes up to the tubing that runs down the center right here that, like I said, the cab just kind of wraps around.
Man, the clearance in these front calipers versus the wheels are pretty tight.
Oh yeah, you can see on the rear calipers, you can see where the wheels have broken wheels in the past.
Really?
And they'll really hit these things hard. But these calipers are nice. They're made out of 4340 billet steel, so that they're very strong and they can take that kind of abuse because obviously the wheel's aluminum. Well, you want to see how the steering works?
Yeah.
Goes left and goes right.
Makes a lot more sense when you can see it.
Yeah. It's, like I said, it's simple, but it definitely looks a lot more complicated than it is.
So those are crazy strong.
Yeah, they're insanely strong, which you need because this is taking the brunt of all your impact. Obviously, the downside of the suspension is the amount of positive camber you're seeing right now. So if you land a little sideways, like we did with Hurt, you can get a little scary and get a little bit more violent.
Oh, shit!
You gotta be a little bit more of a risk taker to run this kind of setup.
You a risk taker? No way.
I don't know. That's what people say. You know, people, they're talking and stuff.
Well, this is incredible, man. I want to see the engine.
So it's as insane as it simply could be because we need longevity in off-road. So what we have here is a Molinex built LS7. It is a genuine LS7, not an iron block. It's an aluminum block. AFR heads. It's got all the forged goodies in the engine, Calis and Ross pistons and scat rods. Again, we can kind of see the header design with the Flowmaster stainless 8-in-1 exhaust on it. This is the tubing that goes back to the radiator. So it goes up here, drops down, comes back up again, and we have a couple vent ports so we can purge the air out of the system.
That's nice.
It's a dry sump engine, so it's got a daily dry sump billet pan on it. It's a really nice piece. There's like a freaking oil pan alone is $3,000. It's crazy how nice it is, though. Obviously, all the oil.
So that's necessary, right, for everything that you're doing here? Does anybody run?
For longevity reasons, yes. All the top-level trophy trucks you would see with dry sumps, most 1400 trucks would be wet sump still.
Really?
Yeah, but I'd had a lot of issues. I went through 4 LS7s one year, and that was because of oiling issues. So I decided to bite the bullet and do the big dog oiling system on it.
Do you just follow dudes with Corvettes around? You're like, I'm going to get that motor from that guy.
No. Yeah. This latest one's brand new, though, straight from GM because I was sick of going through engines all the time. Sometimes
What kind
you
of
gotta
power
start
did
over.
this put down?
So we don't talk about power put down in off-road because it's very disappointing. Okay, power at the crank, around 675 horsepower. Again, not crazy. To the wheels, it's only like 424 horsepower. That's how much residual loss you get through 40-inch tires, turbo
yeah.
400, 4500 stall converter, the 10-inch ring gear. I run 250-weight gear oil, synthetic gear oil in this thing. I mean, it's just all that stuff just takes so much
weight.
power.
So, to me, I think one of the coolest things is that 8-to-1 collector.
It is, and it gives it a very unique, cool sound.
What are you running in when you're running this truck? What kind of rev range are you seeing in this?
Well, the converter doesn't even kick in until 4,500 RPM, and that's just a lot of slippage. It keeps things alive.
Yeah.
Because then you're taking up a lot of the hits with just the torque converter, right? You let it get real high up into RPM range, and then it's always moving. Because you think of off-road engines as you need a lot of torque. Well, yeah, but you also need RPM to make it move. To get into that next gear is just real hard sometimes because one of the races, we're racing first 7 miles of the race, you're just going uphill a wash and you're trying to get some speed up. Well, that's where the big stall converter comes in and really lets you get up on the pipe and really carry that momentum up.
Is there any plan in the future to do a different motor setup, or is this is the
I would
one?
really like to do, I'd always been limited to an aluminum block engine in the front because of rear weight bias and cooling. Aluminum's more efficiently cooled. So I'd always been stuck with this engine as being like top level goal. I would love to go to an iron block with like a big Magnuson blower on it and have a nice 800 to 1,000 horsepower in it.
So Darren's just incredible. I mean, just to have a truck that was completely, pretty much totaled.
Well, then totaled, then set on fire.
Then set on fire. Yeah, and burned. Still keeping the old school vibes. And then the livery is just above and beyond. Looks
So much
cool.
fire.
The seats, all of it.
All of
Just Darren. Just
Here's
Darren.
to you, Darren.
Thanks, Darren, man.
No problem.
Let's go rip something.
Yeah.
Tired of being inside.
Yeah.